Thanks everyone for coming to my presentation. Pardon my French while I talk a little bit about my time in Metz. So my name is Anthony Miyaguchi. I'm a senior software engineer at Planet Labs. We send satellites up into space and take a picture of the Earth every day. And it's a great job. I'm also a graduate of UCLA for my undergrad. I did computer science and engineering. And now I'm finishing up my master's here in OMSCS. I'm going to graduate on Saturday and walk. Thanks. One tip of advice is don't take graduate algorithms in your last semester. It's undue stress. But alongside doing classes like the rest of you, I got to take a semester in Georgia Tech Europe. I did a VIP, and I've helped lead research in the data science at Georgia Tech Club. So today I'll talk a little bit about the preparation, my experience there, both culturally and academically, and some of the impacts that it had on me. I'm wondering how many of you have seen the email, I think it was last week, about going to Georgia Tech Europe? Cool. And anyone interested in actually going? It's a great experience, and I would highly recommend it. But when I was looking at this program, that survey and application, call to application, didn't exist for me. I planned this in the winter of 2021. I saw that on Reddit or the EdStem that there are people who are going to Georgia Tech Lorraine as it was called, and now they're trying to rebrand as Georgia Tech Europe. And so I was curious. I wanted to go to Europe. I'd never gone and had a study abroad in my undergrad because the program was just engineering class after engineering class. So I did the first step and I emailed them. And once I emailed them, it was surprisingly easy to get accepted. I'd had the 2 classes that I needed in order to transfer on campus, and they were like, hey, yeah, come on in. I don't know why more of you aren't doing this. So once I got the acceptance letter, I did the hard part and went to talk with my manager and to figure out like what I was going to do for a whole semester. I can't work and do classes, and so I asked for some time off. And thankfully, my employers were great, and they gave me a whole 6 months off, unpaid. But they do have a generous, time off policy. So after I got that figured out, sorted with my manager, and had my position guaranteed for me when I came back, I went and I figured out the logistics for this. So I went and I filled out a bunch of forms, sent it, got some documents translated, went to the SF consulate for the French consulate to get different forms filled out, and then there was the logistics of moving. So I got a dorm. I moved all of my stuff in my apartment that I had lived in for 7 years into a storage unit and bid the US goodbye. So the academic experience was kind of a refresher. That first day in orientation, they brought everyone together, not in the Georgia Tech Europe campus, but the building next door. And there, I got to see some of the other students. So the student body is broken up into 2 major groups. There are the undergraduates who go there to do their study abroad. There are about 150 of them. And for the graduate students, I was one of 5 master's students that was American. The other 40 or so were French and doing this as a dual degree program. So they would come here and then they would do a few semesters and come here in Atlanta in order to finish up their program and come out with 2 masters, one from their home university and one from Georgia Tech. My schedule was really packed. I took technically 5 courses and tried to fit in a bunch of other things in between, but it was nice to be able to have a schedule that was focused solely on studying and academics, as opposed to trying to fit school around my work schedule. I really enjoyed this. And the 4 classes I took included autonomous robotics. This first course was taught by Professor Pradlier, and it involved a lot of math and programming. So the purpose of this class was to program a TurtleBot. TurtleBot's like a Roomba that has a Kinect on top of it, and the goal was to make this Roomba roam around the second floor and figure out where all the wireless access points are. And to do this, you had to figure out robot kinematics and figure out how to understand the current state of the robot. So doing a little bit of calculus and physics to figure out where am I in the world, and doing a little bit of Bayesian statistics in order to figure out where are the things around me and are they still there when I move? But in addition to this, we worked with ROS and the tooling around ROS and with the physical robot. This robot's name is Hungry Hippo, and I have a love-hate relationship with this thing. And so did my group mates, Kevin and Fardeen. I really enjoyed this class. I learned a lot. I got a lot of hands-on with C++ and Python in the context of robotics and learned a whole ton of robotics-related math and theory. The second class that I took was this Introduction to Research class. So the idea of this class was to take a project from beginning to end. And for this, I wanted to take computer vision and apply it to judo. For those who aren't familiar with judo, it's an Olympic sport that involves grappling and throwing another person. And the goal of this project was to classify different states in competition. So for example, when does the match start? When does it finish? Are they standing? Are they on the ground? And to do this, there wasn't a whole lot of label data. For this project, we had to use models like YOLO and tools like Label Studio in order to create our own data sets so that we could be able to start to think about how to do this classification model. Eventually, we wrote a paper, Annotation Techniques for Judo Combat Phase Classification, and we submitted this to a conference, ACM Multimedia. There's a workshop under there called Multimedia Sports. We got rejected, and that's research. But we're able to submit this on arXiv, and actually, after I posted this online, I got I got an email from someone in Brazil who was really interested in judo, and there's a potential collaboration there. So I thought that was super cool to get work that I did for this class like out there in the world. The third thing I did was independent research. So I've been doing this thing with the Data Science Club where we try to compete in these data science-like competitions. And this semester, I wanted to align the things that needed to be done. I needed to take 9 credits. I had two classes that filled in 6 of those credits. And for the last 3 credits, I went to a professor, proposed to him this thing that I've been working on for several years, and he agreed to do an 8903 with me. And so for this project, we took satellite imagery and we used this to predict the distribution of plant species in Europe. We use things like satellite imagery, which I think is super interesting because I work at a company that does satellite imagery, and raster data like temperature and moisture content to do the prediction. And we published a paper called Tile Compression and Embeddings at the Clay Conference. And this was actually one of several papers that our group published in this year. We published 11 papers, and some of us got this for credit, some of this were just doing it for fun. But I thought it was really cool to be able to align the incentives of finishing and publishing a paper with what I had to do when I was there on campus to be a full-time student. Finally, I'll talk about my French experience, which was super cool to be able to take a French class while in France. When I went to that class, the professor pulled me aside and told me that she had never seen a graduate student in her class pass the class. By the time it was 3rd or 4th week, they drop out because a graduate student's schedule is pretty rough. But I told her that I wanted to do it. Like, I'm in France, why not learn French? And it's also a class not offered to graduate students, only for undergrads. So I was auditing the class. I bought the textbook, I did the homeworks, I attended the lectures, I took notes, I made flashcards, I talked to other students and did those exercises, I took the tests. And at the end of the semester, I'm pretty sure I passed the class. But the professor told me that I had restored her faith in graduate students. And that felt pretty good. And I took away a little bit of French too, which is really nice because being in France is it's a great opportunity to be around other students, to be around faculty, to be in a small environment where you're seen and you're heard, where that can feel it feels very different as an online student and being in online communities. But yeah, like while in France, I took the opportunity to try to see what it was like to live in France. This is the first time I'd been outside of California for longer than 6 weeks. And I was in France for 4 months. And one of the things that I did was I joined the local judo club. I had done judo as a kid, a little bit in college, and so I was a brown belt, and I was able to get along with other folks in the judo club, even though I spoke zero French or a little bit of French. The shared language of judo really helped for me to be able to communicate with others, even though I couldn't really communicate with them in French and they couldn't communicate with me in English. But we took field trips to other judo clubs. I took some other students and we went to this ice skating rink. There were some interesting the professor took some students to see the opera and the orchestra that practiced it. And I got to eat a lot of French food. The cafeterias in France are much better than anything you'll find here in high school or university cafeterias. Food's great, just baseline. Because I was in Europe, I was also able to take advantage of the proximity. So during the semester, I took 3 major trips. One trip was to London, another trip was a Paris-Brussels trip, and then I took a big loop for spring break. The first 2 were for conferences. The first I went to POPL, which is Principles of Programming Languages, and there I went to a workshop for programming for the planet. So using programming languages in a way that can try to help solve some of these large issues we're seeing. I also met some students from Cambridge, and they let me tour the campus, which is super cool. My second trip, I went to a big judo tournament. It's a qualifying judo tournament for the Olympics, and Paris is where the Olympics were held when I was there. So it was really cool to be able to, some of my interests for research, some of my personal interests, and just being there was awesome. And then the next day, I went to Brussels for an open source conference, FOSDEM. And finally, for spring break, I went to Corsica, I went to Rome, and then I went to see my friend in Munich, and we went to Starkbierfest. So kind of cool to be in Lederhosen. But additionally, like after the semester was over, because I took 6 months, I got some time to just travel for myself. So my college buddy came, we learned to scuba dive in the Canaries, we went to see some of my friends in Germany, went to Finland, saw some friends at Barcelona for a music festival. It's like a boat across the Atlantic. And this is just a culmination of a lot of planning that I got to experience, like what it was like to actually have a break. So overall, what was the actual impact of this on me? So the first thing I'd like to note is that my experiences in industry really helped me succeed academically here on campus. I was able to navigate really large software stacks like ROS because I work on complex software systems at work. I was able to manage really long-term projects like a research project because I also have to manage expectations and projects at work. So there are lots of benefits of being someone who's in industry and coming back into a school setting like this. But maybe more profoundly, this kind of changed my idea of what I think my future might look like. So before I went to Georgia Tech Europe, I never thought that I would go and do a PhD. I thought that I'd come out of OMSCS and I would have all the experience that I would really need to do whatever I wanted to do. But as I was there on campus, I saw other OMSCS students who had graduated the program and actually were doing research in Professor Pradlier's Dream Lab. And the successes of being in the classroom and feeling like I was competent at learning new material, being able to program, using all the tools made me rethink what it was like to do things. And so going to France wasn't just like changing my location from California to Europe, but it really changed and calibrated my professional compass. So the thing that I want everyone here to take away is that OMSCS is a very flexible program. And there are lots of different opportunities out there for us to do things that are different and challenging and take us in new directions. Whether it be doing something like a VIP or joining a club, becoming a TA, or doing research. I think if you have the opportunity to get off the beaten path, you should try it. It could take you somewhere amazing. Thank you.
Yep, sure do. Yeah.
Anthony, I was just curious, are there any students that do that are married and that come with their spouses?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Actually, yes. Well, I was the only OMSCS student that was there that semester. I don't think the program has been very broadly advertised. But the one PhD student who was there, he was in OMSCS. He was there with his wife and 2 kids. And so his wife was actually taking classes at the university. And I think his kids were like 2 and 4, and he was in his 4th or 5th year of his PhD. So he was almost checked out, and he was like, I want to get out of here. But there are people who are older and
I got online questions. I'm going to combine a couple. What food did you eat? Why was it great? And what was your favorite country?
So, everyone thinks of French food as being kind of the peak of culinary whatever. And when I was there, I ate a lot of steak and fries, which kind of got boring. Like I'd go to a cafe and it'd be steak and fries. But the cafeteria food, they had a good variety of things. Like they'd have, I don't know what you call these foods, like chicken with ham in between, with a side of veggies of some kind. There'd be a piece of bread, some cheese, maybe like a yogurt or a piece of fruit. And then I'd have water. And that'd be a pretty consistent meal, like some main portion, some veggie, some bread and cheese. And it was very affordable. It was like €4. My favorite country was Germany. I really like Germany. I've been there a couple times, and it was really cool to just like meet up with my friend. He took me on a hike, and it was during a time when it was still cold enough for there to be snow at the top of this hike. And all the people were out and about because it was the first warm day in a while. So that was really cool, and being able to be part of the festivities was nice. Country Roads is a pretty popular song in the beer halls. Yeah, hopefully that got everything.
All right, anyone else? Okay, got 2 here in the middle. Oh, no worries. I didn't need to say that into the microphone.
Yeah, this is very inspiring, especially because I don't think a lot of people know about this program. So thank you for this. It's clear that you like balled out and like got a lot done, published 11 research papers and all. That's really cool. But I know you said that you took time off work. Would you say that it's like I work in an online job, so I was just wondering if it's possible, and if it is possible, worth it to maybe, because you said you took 5 classes, right? So would you say if I like maybe scaled down on the number of classes I took, like 2 to 3, and then still did work online, coordinated with like my team and everything, would you say this is still possible to do and worth it?
It's possible that it's doable because when you're in Europe, like Western and Eastern time, working times are going to be in the evenings. I actually did a lot of meetings from 7 to 10 or 11 just to coordinate with the data science club for projects. I would not recommend working and doing school at the same time when you're there studying abroad, because a lot of that time you could be using for exploring. You could be using it to like better further your like time there in Europe. I think working would kind of detract from the experience like quite a bit. So I would just not recommend. That's just personal opinion. You might want to talk with others to see whether that's a thing, but typically I wouldn't recommend it.
All right, got time for one more question right here.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It was really really nice to see all the pictures and like your experiences. My main question is, and you might have had this in the slides, but do you have a specific PhD route that you want to pursue? Is it just general computer science, or do you want to?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I'm interested in robotics, actually. So I'm really interested in the geometry of high-dimensional spaces, as well as just dynamics, and in particular, like data-driven dynamics. So in the VIP, I had actually worked with a manipulator that they had built in a lab and was doing a lot of, trying to make it do a pick-and-place operation, which is, while it sounds easy, is very challenging with 6 degrees of freedom, and for someone who has very little experience with ROS. So yeah, I'm interested in mobile robotics, and I think self-driving cars might be a really interesting place to be, but just generally anything to do with machine learning, high-dimensional data, I think would be really cool.
All right, great. Another round of applause for Anthony.